I appreciate an opportunity to stand before you and teach. I appreciate the faith that the church gives me in allowing me to do that. And this morning I have a lesson that might be, in my mind, a lesson that is really directed at an audience that sometimes is overlooked. Today I want to talk about two young people. I want to talk to young people because God so often in Scripture actually addresses male to you. And today we're going to look at a couple passages of Scripture. We're not going to go into too much detail, but or too many examples of it because it's unnecessary, I think, for the purposes of our lesson. But the passage before you, Paul is speaking to his son in the faith, Timothy, and one of the things he says near the end of his letter there is, let no one look down on your youthfulness. Young people, I want you to pay close attention to that. Let no one look down on your youthfulness. Paul is essentially revealing here that he anticipates that the very people that Timothy is going to speak to are going to have low expectations of him. Paul's saying, don't let that happen. Don't let anyone look down on your youthfulness. A question. We often use a term called teenagers, right? Teenagers, quiz. Where was the word teenager first used? Socrates? Shakespeare? Mark Twain? Reader's Digest? Anybody? It's Reader's Digest. 1941. It was talking about how people are marketing to teenagers. These are young people who are not quite old enough to be in the war effort, and they want to basically market to them. Before, and what happened from that point in time, I think we use teenager interchangeably, kind of as, I should say not interchangeably, but we use the term teenager to describe a period of time between childhood and adulthood. And folks, I just want to let you know, that does not exist. Okay? Before 1941, that word didn't even exist. What you were a child or an adult. And you were judged to be a child or an adult based on what you said and did, the responsibilities that you accepted and performed versus being a child and needing to be reminded again and again and again. This is not me, is it? Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not pointing. I thought it would be me. It could have been me, okay? The reason I bring this up is that parents, you are not raising children. You are not raising boys and girls. You are raising men. You are raising women. That is your goal. Train up a child in the way he shall go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Right? That's the Proverbs 22 is talking about. And what he's talking about, train him up in the way they shall go. It requires a little discernment. I have 3 sons. They are not alike. I had to figure out that they were different over time. I have a flower child, a cop, and a geek. Okay? You don't treat them all the same way. Okay? You just can't. I had to recognize early on that they had different gifts, different desires, different things that they were very, very good at, and try to channel those energies so that they could actually fulfill, if you will, their abilities, their talents. Try to channel them. Now I'm so proud of my boys. I have 3 adult men who are extremely kind, and they are excelling at their chosen vocations. I could not be happier. Other than now I have a granddaughter, so I mean, I'm pretty cool about that, right? Yeah. Grandsons are okay, but my mom had 8 grandsons, no granddaughters, okay? So it's like, this is, amazing. Anyway. Well, see, I want us to understand that childhood, your age does not reflect your ability to be responsible or to be impactful in people's lives. A couple of examples. George here, I can't see back there, but George was born in Virginia in 1782. His dad died at age 11. And although George was not considered extremely bright by his peers, he decided he wanted to master some things. So he mastered geometry, trigonometry, and surveying by age 16. Think algebra and trigonometry, okay? Or calculus, okay? So because he wanted to be a surveyor. At 17 years old, he accepted a job as the official surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia. And he spent the next 3 years in the frontier surveying places that had never been mapped before. He was a full-grown adult at the age of 7. He was a man at 17. Imagine you 17-year-olds in the room being out in the middle of the frontier for 3 years with very little help, often alone, surveying. Well, of course, we know that's George Washington, right? David was a young boy. At age 10, he began his career at sea. Yeah, at sea, on the warship Essex. In the War of 1812, at the age of 11, he saw his first battle. At the age of 12, he was given command of a ship that had been captured in battle, and on the journey home, that's it. They gave a 12-year-old boy the captainship of a vessel that had been captured, right? Well, the British captain took issue with being taking orders from a 12-year-old boy, so he said, no, I'm taking over. And young David said, if you show your face on deck armed, you will be shot. We're going to throw you overboard. 12-year-old boy. British commander understood he's going to stay below and mind his place. Before his death, David Farragut, he had spent 59 years in the Navy. He is best known for, during the Civil War, winning the Battle of Mobile, where the Federal Army basically took over the Missouri, or Mississippi. He's the one who is known for saying, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." And a torpedo was a mine. And they just he just said, forget the mines, full speed ahead, and they got through the minefield and they captured Mobile, and that was that. 10 years old, he's serving. 11 years old, he sees battle. 12 years old, he's standing up to a full-grown man, basically saying, you're going to do what you're told. I don't recommend that way of life, by the way. Clara was born in Massachusetts, 1821. She was a baby of the family. People say she was kind of timid, shy, didn't even hardly speak around other people. But at age 11, her brother David fell from the roof and he was hurt very, very badly. And she insisted on being the one to take care of him. She was the baby of the family. Awkward, out of place. But soon she proved herself to be able to make him very comfortable and was the best qualified in the entire household to do so. So the doctor said, you know what, Clara? You're responsible for your brother's care. About 2 years later, he had full recovery. Then all of a sudden, 14 years old, she became the nurse for her father's hired man who had the smallpox. And people had so much faith in her, in the community, they actually were bringing people to their farm so Clara could help keep those people alive. And of course, we know this is Clara Barton. The point of these 3 stories is that age had nothing to do with their impact on people's lives. It had nothing to do with the amount of responsibility they were able to bear and bear well. We are raising, parents, we are raising men, we are raising women. We are not raising boys and girls. Let's be clear about that. You'll be doing them a disservice. You'll be looking down at their youthfulness. He says, let no one look down at your youthfulness, is what Paul said. Moms and dads, don't get in the way there. He says, but rather what? Well, we're going to get to that in just a moment. I want to talk to you about a couple of examples in the book of Ecclesiastes. In the book of Ecclesiastes, most people my age have studied this book. Young people, read this book. Study this book. Basically what it is Solomon, the son of David, the most wise and powerful man in the world. No appetite, nothing had been kept from him. God had blessed him with everything. It was an opportunity for him to flourish and to fail. It was his choice. And he did both. The book of Ecclesiastes is the book, Ecclesiastes means the preacher. Okay, so he's just saying the preacher. And what he wants to do is he wants to talk about life under the sun. It's mentioned 27 times in the book. And he's saying life under the sun, and he looks around to all that he's observed, and he said it's all vanity. That's mentioned 29 times in the book. So he's basically looking at life under the sun from a perspective of a man living in this world. And he wants to make observations. So he makes a lot of observations, and he basically talks about, hey, I was given everything. All my possessions, it was vanity, meaning it was meaningless. It was void of importance. It was all vanity. So your possessions, vanity. My triumphs, my accomplishments, he had built so many things, accomplished so many things, and he's looking back at it and he says, it's all vanity. It's meaningless. He had every pleasure he could imagine for a young man, and yet he looked and he says, it's vanity. It's meaningless. And he goes on to talk about his status, the political status, social status. He goes on and on about all these things that people end up reaching for in this life, and he says, it's all vanity. It's meaningless. And then he gets toward the end of the book where he really wants to tie a bow on it. He decides, I want to talk to young people. It's very similar to his Proverbs where he's always talking about his son. Don't be annoyed, young people, when your parents and grandparents want to give you advice. They do that because they love you. And they want you to not make the same mistakes they have, or to follow a path in which they found to be productive. So let's go to first of all, Ecclesiastes 11. And pardon me, I can't see that. And I brought my glasses, but they have sunglasses. So no help. So I'm just going to turn around, pardon the back of my head. Basically, verse 7, he just wants to point out, because it's kind of a miserable book. If you read it too much and you don't have the right perspective, you're going to think, wow, life's a bummer, man. It's kind of like, remember, what was the Gulliver's Travels, the cartoon? There was a guy named Glum who was always going, we're all going to die. We'll never make it. You kind of get like that when you're reading this, okay? But he gets to the end and he says, hey, I want you to know something. The light is pleasant. It is good for the eyes to see the sun. So life under the sun, he says, hey, young, I want you to know life can be pleasant. And it is pleasant. Indeed, if a man should live many years, let him rejoice in all of them. Good advice, young people. Don't listen to all the people in this. Don't watch the news. Don't read the paper. Don't get on social media. Everybody, it seems like the most offended, the most disappointed people just monopolize that space. No, life is pleasant. Life's a gap. It's all up to you. It's your perspective. That's how you want to live. You want to be happy? You'll be happy. You want to be miserable? Well, you won't have a lot of friends. Okay? But he says, hey, but what? Let him rejoice in them all, and let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. Everything that will come is futility. See, this is a metaphor. And when he's talking about with light, he's talking about life. Life under the sun. When he's talking about darkness, he's talking about death. When he's saying, hey, but remember death. Remember the days of darkness. The days of death, they're going to be many. After this life, there is going to be death. Okay? So all that has no meaning right now. The value is in your life. You only have this life to live. You can prep for later, but don't worry about the darkness. You remember it's there, but don't. It's futility. Spend too much time there, right? Then he says, rejoice, young man, during your childhood. Good advice. Rejoice in your childhood. And and let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood. And so I want to say, how many people here, just raise your hand, how many people here had someone in their life love you enough to say, enjoy life? Anybody? Raise your hand. Huh? Not as many as I'd hoped. Well, you know what? You need to start doing that. You need to start reminding people to enjoy life. Life is amazing. Life is just, it's so full of blessings. God put us here not as a punishment. He put us here to live life to the fullest. And that's what the preacher here is trying to say. You know what? Young people, don't waste your youth worrying about stuff. Enjoy it. Immerse yourself in these things. But he says, and follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. You have a dream? Pursue it. The only caveat here is, but yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. All right? Hey. So there's a caveat there. You know, you want to be great at something, you do it. You want to be a surveyor? George said, I'm going to do it. David wanted to be in the Navy. David did it. Clara wanted to love people and serve people and care for people. Clara did it. Your dream is unique. Pursue it. That's what your heart wants you to do. Just do it. Brief story, because we're going to talk now. I'm almost done, believe it or not. I want to talk about 3 people in my life who basically intervened at a time in my teenage years, and they gave me a different perspective. First, I'm going to talk about my stepdad who raised me, Niall Truman Davis Jr. One day I decide I want to go hunting, and then Hugo D'Andrea had a ranch, about 7 sections of land. That's a lot. It's 7 square miles of land. Okay? And he had cattle and he had ponds, and on those ponds there were ducks, and surrounding the creek that came out of there were pheasant, there were chukar, there were quail, and to a young man who enjoyed hunting and fishing, it was a paradise. And me and my buddy Blake, we wanted to go hunting and fishing, and I said to my dad one day as we were driving by that, I said, you know, Dad, I'd really like to go hunting and fishing there. And he said, well, ask. What? Ask. And I said, okay. Well, so he pulls right in, goes up to Hugo's house. And so we're standing at the door, and Hugo answers and says, hello. And I'm looking at my dad like my dad's going to ask for me. And my dad said, I'm raising a man. Ask. And I said, Mr. D'Andrea, may I please go fishing on your pond? And he said, what's your name? I said, Frank Macy. He said, well, first, don't you think we ought to meet? Yes, sir. I'm Frank Macy. This is my, he says, yeah, you can fish here anytime. And he said, Mr. D'Andrea, may I hunt here? He says, do you have a fishing license or hunting license? He asked me about the fishing license. You have a hunting license? I said, yes, sir. He says, so you fulfilled your hunter safety course? I said, yes, sir. He says, what kind of shotgun do you have? And I explained to him I had a 410 and all that, and he goes, okay. He says, well, you can hunt here, but you have to call ahead of time because I have a bull, and I put him in all different pastures, and I don't want you to be in the same pasture as that bull. So you need to call me. Here's my phone number. He gives it to me. He says, call me at least a day ahead of time so I can move that bull. And if I say no, it's because I don't have time to move the bull. Otherwise, you're going to be able to go hunting. And I said, well, thank you very much, sir. And we got in the truck, and my dad's not saying a word. We get home, and I'm just sitting in I don't know what to say. And he said, and he looked at me, he says, what's wrong? And I said, I don't believe he said that. He says, well, I can't believe you didn't ask before now. You're a man. If you want to be a man, act like one. If you want something, and someone has it, and it doesn't cost them anything, just ask permission. And it was a big lesson for me. It was a big lesson. All I had to do was follow the desire of my eyes. Second person. I'm a freshman in high school, and I take a humanities class from a woman named Marie Edmondson. Marie Edmondson was also a teacher I had in middle school, and she was pretty. So, of course, I had to take humanities from Mrs. Edmondson and a freshman in high school. And I get to that class, and Mrs. Edmondson's on to me. Okay, she knows. She's not her first rodeo. So I get there, first couple classes, she just gave us like one-page homework. It was one page of homework, just one side of one page. And she'd ask us to summarize what we had studied in class. That was our homework, period. I hand in 2 of these, 2 days. I remember it's 2 days, and she comes back and she puts two of them on my desk, and she says, "Oh, sorry, Mr. Macy, stay after class." After she puts 2 of them on my desk, she says, "You have 2 C's, and those C's stand for something other than average. You fill in the blank." And I said, "Okay," and she says, "This is not your good work, okay? You get your A+ work." So she says, "Tomorrow I want you to rewrite these. I want you to write tonight's homework. I want it to be done A's," right? I said, "Okay." So I come in the next day, I bring them all here. After class, she walks over to me and she says, "Okay." She says, "Not good enough. I want A+ work. You're an A+ student. Just apply yourself." Boom. Okay? She says, "Rewrite them." Oh, okay. So I'm rewriting. She says, "No." She stops. She says, "You are writing what you think I want you to write. I want you to write what you think." She sends me home. I come back the next day. I hand in those pages. She comes up to my desk in the middle of class. She hands them down, all A+, and she walks away, and she turns and goes, "That will never be hard for you." And I got A+ the rest of the semester. She raised the bar. I thought the bar was here. She said, no. The bar's here. Parents, your children are going to reach whatever expectations you have for them. If you want them to hand in C work the rest of their life, you go ahead and just make that the bar. I mean C work in the metaphorical sense. If you want them just to be average people who do not excel, then just keep whatever standards or expectations you have of them right down here. But if you want them to excel, to reach their potential, you raise that bar. I said I had a third story, but I'm going to run out of time. So, all right. I'm going to say it anyway, real quick. Roger Dietrichson was my freshman and my junior varsity coach. He called me a couple weeks ago, and we talked for 3 hours on the phone. Roger Dietrichson. And I did not know this, but he had lots of memories of me, and he wanted to talk to me about them. Right? And one of the things that came up, I brought it up, and then he expanded on it, but when I was a freshman in high school, we had 15 kids on the basketball team, and I was the smallest, goofiest, most uncoordinated kid on that team. I think in 22 games I had 4 points. And 2 of those points I saw Paul Simons down. I got a rebound. Paul Simons was way down at the other end of the court, and I heaved it to him, and it went right in the basket. Okay? So 4 points. 2 of them were an accident, okay? So the next year, I had growing some, and I'm getting my confidence up a little bit from playing with the older kids, and he puts me in a game, and in practice, he'd keep telling me, I was playing the 3 position. He'd say, 3, you get the ball, you shoot it. It's a play, you get the ball, you're going to shoot. So he's setting a pick for the number 3 guy, and I'm to shoot it. I get in the game, and that play comes to me, but I don't shoot it. I just pass it off, let someone else set up another play. Finally, coach calls timeout. He comes right at me and says, Frank, shoot the ball. You are a good shot. Shoot the ball. Okay. I thought it was the defensive guy. No, shoot the ball. Next game at Reno High School, I had 16 points. Not because I was because my coach believed in me to shoot the ball. His expectations were here. I was living down here. No confidence, so on. Verse 10. So remove grief and anger from your heart and put away pain or evil from your body, because childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. It applies to every person. Young people, good advice. Don't worry about stuff. Remove anything that's evil or bad from your life and excel. Real briefly here, this is more for the entertainment of old people, but Ecclesiastes 12, he also says, remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near when you will say, I have no delight in them. Amen? Amen? Right? We're going to go over a couple of these things. So remember, what he's saying here is, hey, young people, remember your Creator. Remember your Creator. He's not talking about anything other than that. Remember, you're a child of God, and do it in your youth. Because there's so much you can do for Him in your youth. He says, do it before the difficult times come. Real briefly. Oops, wrong one, back. Do it before the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. This is a metaphor for your eyesight. You know, in time, your eyesight will fail. The sun, the bright light is dim. The stars are really dim, and it's not coming back. The clouds don't return, or the clouds. They return after the rain. In other words, your vision doesn't get clearer. That's a reality. That's going to happen. It happens to some of us. It's happening to some of us. In the day the watchmen of the house tremble, that's what he's talking about, your hands and arms. The very things that used to protect your family, now they tremble. You can't do that anymore. The mighty men stoop, that is your legs, your back. The grinding ones go idle because there are few. You lose your teeth. And those that look through windows grow dim, your eyesight again. And the doors of the street are shut as the sound of the grinding mill is low. You've seen a lot of people like this? Yeah? More so in my youth than yours. And the one will arise at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song will sing slowly. So he's basically, there's a lot of interpretations, but my favorite interpretation is when he's talking about the arising of sound. Although you can't hear like you used to, you have trouble sleeping. You get up earlier than you used to because you're done sleeping. And the daughters of song will sing softly. You can't even participate in that kind of song stuff anymore. Some say that also could be your hearing. Furthermore, and this is really a sad, men are afraid of a high place and tares on the road, and the almond tree blossoms. As you get older, and older people here will probably recognize this. As you get older, you are less likely to get on a ladder or jump on the roof because you know your bones are brittle. You're afraid of the tears on the. You're not like a young man where you were with confidence facing the physical altercations, the threats to your family or so on. Different culture as well. The almond tree blossoms, your hair turns white. The grasshopper drags himself along. Once you were a grasshopper, but now you're, right? And the caperberry is ineffective. That just basically says all those reproductive thoughts you had as a kid, that's gone. It's replaced by indifference, right? As George never mind. Say George Burns said that once, but for man goes on to his eternal home while mourners go out in the street. See, young people, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Take advantage of it. Serve God now. Don't wait. You can do so much for God when you're young with all that energy and all that vigor, because that is all going to go away. And what you're going to have if you don't do that is you're going to have regret. You're going to have regret. And then he ends this letter, Ecclesiastes, with the conclusion when it's all heard is fear God and keep His commandments, for this applies to every person, for God will bring every act of judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. So the book of Ecclesiastes essentially is life under the sun. Everything is vanity except for fulfilling your heart, your desires, while also pleasing and serving God. Mm-hmm. So back to, sorry. We're not going to talk about Grandpa. He had other things, but we're out of time. So notice he says, let no one look down on your youthfulness, but notice the last part of this. But rather, in speech, in conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example of those who believe. He's saying here, don't let others determine what the expectations are. You prove yourself an example. You set the bar for yourself. You set the bar. Young people, now is the day. You need to think about serving God today. Don't listen to the whiners. Don't listen to the naysayers and the complainers and the glums of the world. We're all going to die. We'll never make it. Listen to your desires and listen to God, and you'll be just fine. And that is our lesson today.